Hello and welcome to the guest portions of DC Figures and Collectibles. I'm Tyler G, and I'm joined again by Scott, as always. And the guest that we have for you right now his name is James, and if you're not following him, you definitely should. You can find his site at the Dark McKnight _creations on Instagram, and he is a custom action figure collector. He's told me previously that he's been doing it for over 20 years. He has tons of work on display, and especially one that has been very prominent, especially in superhero media as of late, and that is The Boys. He was able to do custom figures for the first person to do custom figures for the VOT industry, which is pretty awesome. So he's made figures for the VCU, and I don't know how he doesn't have more followers, to be honest, because his work is amazing. But we hope that we're able to help remedy that somehow. But his name is James, and we'd like to welcome him. James, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. How about you?
We're pumped to have you.
Yeah, well, trust me, it was pretty cool that you guys asked me to be a part of this.
I have to give credit to my cousin for finding you, because we've been doing our own customs to the show because we absolutely love it. And we saw your work and we're like, okay, that's the guy that does it from the show. So big thanks to my cousin at Venomous. Check him out. And first of all, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you growing up. What got you into the action figure world? Or maybe if it was something like a show, or maybe a parent that it was a hobby or something like that. And then what ultimately got you into doing customs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been working in film for about 9 years now, doing in the set deck and props department. So I just happened to know a couple of people who were working on The Boys before it started up for the first season, and I got offered the job as a props buyer, so I came along for that. And then that sort of just, I awkwardly shoehorned my way in as the builder who would make the figures on the show. So it kind of lucked out for that one.
Awkwardly?
Well, I wasn't supposed to be the one who was building them.
Okay.
We had someone else who was doing his own figures, and our deadline was approaching, and I kind of unveiled my secret talent. Because before that, I mean, I've been collecting action figures since I was a kid. I think I vividly recall like a Toy Biz Cyclops figure that, as a like 5 or 6 year old, I'd carry around with me everywhere. And that kind of started my love from there. It went to Batman, it went to Star Wars, and no one ever said no when I kept asking for more action figures, evidently. So I guess I have my parents to thank.
Nice.
But yeah, no. So it's just my love of nerdy things began early, and then just never sort of left.
So how long have you been customizing action figures for then?
So I think it's probably been like 18 years. I think so.
Wow.
The first figure I ever made was a Goku from Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, nice. Nice.
I made it out of a G.I. Joe.
Okay.
3 3/4?
Yeah.
Nice.
I don't really remember how I discovered, people making custom action figures. I must have seen something online or something. But I had all these old G.I. Joes laying around, so I was like, well, I'm going to try my hand at this. And I don't still have it, but I remember it looking pretty terrible. So thankfully, I don't know if I've improved a whole bunch, but at least a little bit.
I'd say so.
Yes, I would agree with that. How do you think action figures have changed over that sort of time?
I mean, even just like you look at some of the stuff Hasbro's doing in like a 6-inch scale, and like the faces in both realism and also the like comic book styled action figures are just incredible. let alone the articulation, all that stuff. And, you know, it only gets better when you go up to like Hot Toys, that sort of caliber.
And are you yourself still a big collector, or are you more into just doing your own thing then?
I am a big collector. I've had to attempt to focus my collection a little bit in recent years. I just realize how much space I don't have. So I'm definitely fighting that. So I've narrowed my vision slightly since the you know, the Batman the Animated Series line.
Oh yeah, great choice.
Well, that's one I forced myself to stay clear of. Unfortunately, I think I picked up the first wave with all their imperfections while they were still breaking, and I knew that if I went down that rabbit hole, I'd have every single one, and I couldn't let myself do that.
Yeah, there's no ladder tall enough to get you out of that rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I've seen the Batmobile and the Batwing that they've released for that, and they're incredible. And
amazing.
I badly want them, but I'm forcing myself to exercise a little self-control, which is not easy.
And honestly, it really isn't.
if you're hard on space, that Batwing is unbelievably big.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I've got the Black Series TIE Fighter that they released years ago.
I remember that bad boy.
I bought that and I took it out of the packaging and I struggled with a place to keep it. Now it's tucked away in a closet somewhere. So I have this stuff on display, but there's only so much you can really do.
So of all the things that you have collected, what sort of line or particular figure are you sort of most proud of and that you enjoy the most?
That's tough because with narrowing my collection, I've kind of I have randomly picked characters that I've decided to focus on. So I've got the Scout Troopers and the Royal Guards from Star Wars have always been my two favorite troopers from Star Wars. So I'm at a point now where I buy everything I find of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Which is great. It makes for a very cool play altogether, but now eventually you start trying to figure out creative ways to not have them laying all on top of each other. But I do love that. I've got the helmets to go with them, and they look great. But
so will you be out on Force Friday around a week from now?
I don't know. The Black Series is one of the lines I'm still collecting, and especially now it's only getting better. It's still got its imperfections, but it's pretty great overall. I went to the last Force Friday for The Last Jedi, and around that, The Last Jedi came out and was very difficult for me as a Star Wars fan.
I feel you.
So I've definitely been more cautious about what I'm buying from Star Wars these days because of that. There's only so many Rose Ticos and Old Man Lukes that you can buy and feel good about.
I don't think you can feel good about a Rose.
Yeah, well, that was one of the ones I managed to steer clear of, luckily, early on.
Well, the one question I want to have, and it's in terms of the boys' figures and the fact that you customize them, did you happen to have a good look at what these characters are going to look like in live action form beforehand? Did they show you pictures, or were you left to your own devices?
No, I was because I was already working on the show as a props buyer. The production office walls were lined with concept art, and as the actors were going through their initial fittings and getting sized for costumes and stuff, all of the photos from that went onto a costumes website. Like a server, and they gave me access to that. So when I started making the figures, I could base them off that, which was incredibly helpful. And I would have been at a real loss if I didn't have that.
And are some of these figures made from existing parts of figures?
pretty well every part of them is existing figures. And there's been a couple of people on Instagram who have been able to spot them, which I'm happy about, but I'm also nervous about, because you never know how these companies feel about their stuff being chopped up and used as a prop.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean that's what we do with lots of other things as well. Any of the cool builds we've gotten to do on the show, guns or like Black Noir's knives, anything like that. There's a certain amount of stuff that gets cobbled together to make that happen. So I kind of look at it that it's fair game. Just hopefully you don't notice too much what they are.
No, I feel like you would have to be a diehard collector to recognize some of this stuff.
Yeah, there's been a couple of people who have messaged me though, being like, "Is this that base body or is it this head?" And they have gotten it dead on.
Dead on.
So
for the Black Noir, is that a Flash figure?
Yeah, that was
Dark Flash.
Yeah, that was the Black Flash or whatever it was from the DC Collectibles line from the TV show.
Ah, okay.
No, wait, no, it was Professor.
Was it the Mattel?
Yeah, no, because he was he was Professor Zoom.
Okay.
Flash, what have you?
Ah,
But yeah, no. So there's definitely little things that got left behind in those sculpts that you can kind of tell.
I think it's brilliant. It's like it made watching the show even more enjoyable for me, especially when you see the figures on the screen. And you've mentioned that you've been in film for a while now, and you've had props appear in shows. But was it a little different when you got to see an action figure you created on screen, especially in like a situation where like A-Train is in Huey's home? It's a tense situation.
Yeah, I mean that was like I kind of have a collection of things that I've been, proud of throughout my work in film. Little like mementos of things I built or, got to be a part. It was kind of my love of comics and superheroes colliding with my work for the first real time. And so seeing all that stuff there is pretty incredible. Exactly that. When you see A-Train holding up that talking A-Train I made and like pointing at it and laughing, it's it's pretty surreal.
What was the making process like? So in terms of the sort of the idea, did they say, right, you've got to do these figures by a certain date, or did they kind of leave you alone to sort of get them right, or was there sort of pressure to make them?
Various, depending on which order I kind of went in. I tried to get some of the more difficult ones out of the way first. Yeah. But we're always on deadlines, especially like episodic television. The Boys is a show, 8 episodes, but you're filming, the whole thing takes place over about 6 months, working 5 days a week.
Cool.
And then I'd come home and I'd have to work on action figures. So I was definitely under the gun a couple of times, closer than I would like to have had them done, but they all got finished for the most part. So that's something.
And they look brilliant in package.
Yeah, so that was I just posted a couple more photos today. One of our guys in the art department, Dave Meredith, did graphics for everything, so he did his own renditions of the characters, different styles. And so when it came time to needing to package the figures, Dave, who's also a giant nerd, right away went for the Toy Biz style packaging from that X-Men line. And that was exactly what I had in mind for this, and it just worked out great. But yeah, in hand especially, it's extremely cool to see them.
It only makes me hope that there's a line.
I would hope that someone realizes that these would make good action figures. There's no way that a property like this, hopefully, I should say, knock on wood, but the show's done well for itself. We're going on season 2, so hopefully that means many more, and maybe they'll be smart enough to actually make the toys of it.
That'd be
What was one of the
great.
hardest figures that you've had to make?
For the show, the Deep was kind of a giant pain for me. If only,
Scales?
yeah, the scales, and if you look closely at the figure, they're not sculpted. I was running short on time, but it's all just like hand painted dots all throughout the costume, and that gets very old very quickly, and you can spot a lot of inconsistencies. But luckily, when they're on your TV screen, they're never really that close on it, so that helps.
Oh, man, I think it looks good still.
Well,
Yeah, it does look brilliant.
I've made so many A trains for the show because he being the fact that he was kind of the character that pushed Huey along this path. It made sense to have a lot of merchandise with his face on it. So all the different action figures, it just got at some point all the line work of painting that got pretty meticulous, and I started going a little cross-eyed at times, but they look all good for the most part. So
I mean, if you have a picture up that's available where it's a picture of A Train and it's a full turnaround picture where you can see just the amount of detail and paintwork that you did. Like you just said, the line work, even on the back of the figure, you can tell that this guy loves what he's doing, because I think that like what you said, a lot of times these are seen in package and they're not all the way up close. And I guess it could be easy to get sloppy and think, oh, well, no one's ever going to see this, but you could tell that you put in some work and you're enjoying what you're doing, so it's nice to see that.
yeah, well, I mean, it's also the one of those things where I could cut a few corners, and that's not to say I didn't cut a few corners on some of those. But at the end, it's kind of nice to have that like finished product in your hand where you can see it and be like, yep, this looks good all around. I sign off on it, sort of a thing. So that makes a difference.
One of the most creative figures that I have to say that, and I think it's just absolutely cool. And I want to ask if you did your own mold for it. Is it the transparent figure?
No, I did not. For translucent, that was
Yeah,
one
translucent.
yeah, no, that's all right. They make a joke about that in the show, so it's on brand.
That's probably why I messed up.
Yeah. No, it's that one kind of racked my brain for a little bit, trying to figure out how to make it without making it just a jumpsuit with no head and no hands, which I felt would be kind of a cheat. So I looked up transparent action figures, or at least figures that were made in like relatively clear molded plastic, and an Iceman figure came up, and I ended up Frankensteining that together to give him the hands and the head, and it turned out pretty well. I think that's actually one of the ones I like the most, even though it's not the best looking. It was at least just a fun challenge.
Oh, definitely creative.
Yeah, well, and it's posting this stuff on Instagram. I've been tagging the actors in their roles, so every once in a while, someone's chimed in, saying that they love the work. And Alex Hassel, who played Translucent in the show, commented asking where he can get one. That always makes you feel kind of cool.
Oh, definitely. And that's the best thing is knowing that we're getting a season 2, because that show is pretty awesome. Are you a fan of the show, and were you a fan of the comic books beforehand?
I was, yeah. No, I hadn't read much of the comics, so it was more. I had read the first like collection of trades, but then once I got the show, it was like get even more into it, and we were lucky enough that eventually the artist of the comic book, Derek Robertson, he popped up for set visits and stuff.
Oh,
It was pretty cool to have someone like that recognize your work and want to meet you because of it.
that's crazy.
He's a big action figure fan as well, and that was something that he spotted right away. So we kind of hit it off from there.
That's even better. That these figures you got to meet the guy that actually created the characters.
Yeah. Well, and
That's awesome.
nothing but praise for him. Anytime I've seen him or spoken to him, it's just. And I imagine for someone like that to be in a position to kind of see everything you've created in this whole other medium would be pretty cool.
It's a pretty basic and broad question, but what's it like working on a TV show?
Stressful at times, I'd say.
Yeah.
I mean, it a lot has to come down on the subject matter and whether or not it engages you, because without naming shows or movies, I've definitely worked on stuff where I do not think the end product is going to be great.
Ooh.
And that makes the long hours and months of work much harder. So when you have something like The Boys, where you feel like you're a part of something that's going to be cool, it's pretty great. Again, it'll be stressful, but it makes it worthwhile.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely is worthwhile, especially getting your own sort of creations shown off in front of everybody. It's just amazing.
Yeah, well, they as part of the bonus features on like Amazon Prime, I think they call it like X-Ray, and it's just like their little behind the scenes or like bonus content stuff they produced. They ended up making an action figure commercial with all of my toys.
Awesome.
And I saw that. I didn't even think about that.
That was something that they had always talked about doing, but I never saw it happen. And evidently they did that in LA in between seasons. But it was something that just kind of went up when the show went up, and I didn't realize it was ever there. And when I finally saw it, it blew my mind. It's like that. I remember all those toy commercials as a kid, and smashing an action figure through the paper roll and stuff like that.
Yeah, because it is a total throwback, 90s style kids commercial.
Yeah, and I mean, now it just gets the added excitement of it being the stuff I helped make. So it was pretty cool. There's a lot of good that came from getting to work on the show.
We're gonna have to share that, because hopefully there's a clip of that on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I ended up finding it. I think they posted it on their official Instagram, The Boys.
Okay, we might have to take it from there.
Piggyback it off onto mine because I was so excited.
Dang. Well, speaking of TV shows, and you kind of mentioned it, we do have a couple of questions that we always ask. And you mentioned Batman the Animated Series and trying to avoid going down the wormhole of figures that they have. And this is basically a result of us going down that wormhole this whole show. But we want to ask you, what are your top 3 favorite Batman the Animated Series episodes?
Oh, top 3. You asked me this, Tyler, and I kind of gave it some thought. I struggled, though, I will say that. I realized that pretty much any episode with Mr. Freeze, I always dig. And I rewatched the first episode, Heart of Ice, the other night because of that.
Tell me it doesn't hold up still.
Oh, it's still great. I realized that I have no real affinity to Mr. Freeze as a character. He's one of Batman's great rogues, but he's never been one of my favorites. But for whatever reason, the animated series, I feel like they just nailed him every single time. And it was the same with when he popped up in Batman Beyond too. Like that was one of the best episodes of that show.
Oh, good shout there.
Yeah, that Batman Beyond episode is one of the best in the DCAU that has ever been made, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And from there, I don't know. I struggle a little bit more. Some of the ones I remember the most fondly are ones that I don't know if they'd hold up now. It's been it's probably been about 2 or 3 years since I've gone and rewatched all of the show. But like Almost Got Him is an incredible episode.
Oh, that's still holds.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one.
It's it's lighthearted, but it's pretty great, and it's the same with I forget the name of it, but the episode where Batman's hiding out in the basement of these kids' house. Penguins trying to get,
yeah.
and for whatever reason that one sticks out in my mind that I remember very clearly from the 90s, and I would be interested to go and rewatch that one. But again, it's like anything with some of the great rogues, like Ra's al Ghul has always been one of my favorites. So I love seeing him pop up in that show.
Yeah, those are always fun.
It's hard to choose. Are you guys able to put out a top 3?
Oh yeah, but the reason we like to ask the guests too, and usually we don't even give them time to think, because we like to see what just pops off the top of their head. So it is interesting that you picked those ones, because a lot of people they wouldn't, especially Batman in My Basement. That one usually gets a lot of controversy. So it is cool to hear that you enjoy that one.
Yeah, well, again, who knows if it's actually worth watching again, but
I just rewatched it. It's all right.
Yeah.
No, I always put my number one that I always put is and I combine them because the 2-parter is Feet of Clay. I absolutely love that. And then the second one I always give, and it's because it's not one that people usually pick, but I tend to enjoy it just because of nostalgia purposes, and it's Tiger, where Selena turns into a cat.
Okay, yeah. I enjoy it.
Scott?
My favourite is Make Him Laugh, because Joker's just a funny jerk in the entire episode. And then second one, any of the Riddler episodes, probably What Is Reality, I'd go for as number 2. I think that's an absolutely sensational episode. Then number 3, maybe something like Christmas with the Joker, or something like Never Fear,
Chance to Dream,
or Persian's to Dream as well, or Over the Edge, anything like that. It's just, but those 2 definitely are the top 2, where you could literally put any of the however many episodes there are in that, apart from the Terrible Trio that's out.
Yeah.
Or Farmer Brown, he's not allowed in.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but those are great picks, because those are the ones we usually don't hear. We usually hear Freeze.
Basement's a new one.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's Batman. Batman was always one of those characters I gravitated so much towards because of his strong villains. Like, you can roll the dice on anything, and the character that he's fighting off against is usually pretty amazing. And villains are always more interesting, I'd say, for the most part. We've got a couple extra layers. So with Batman the Animated Series, you can pretty much just throw a dart
so true.
Land on a good episode.
It's weird. They managed to tell you everything about Batman through telling you about a villain, which is just ridiculous. It's fantastic the way they did it.
Yeah, well, the sheer genius that went into that show, it still perplexes me how such a great TV show kind of came about. Like, you talk to anyone about great cartoon shows from the 90s, and if that's not top 3, then they're not thinking clearly.
Yeah, don't talk to those people. But speaking of villains, well, Scott, do you want to ask your question that you usually ask?
Yes, I have a feeling I know what you're going to ask, by the way, because I was going to ask about it too. But yes, are you a big fan of the Batman Arkham games?
Oh yeah, definitely. No, I mean less so Origins, but that whole series was incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it really is, isn't it? What's your favorite out of the 4 or 3?
Probably Arkham City. That seemed like that took everything that was so great about Arkham Asylum and just made it a little bit bigger. Arkham Knight kind of was able to riff on that and have its own storyline, but Arkham City was so good.
Yeah, the story as well as the gameplay was just magnificent.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful, and the fact that you bring back Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, that alone is worth the price of the game.
Yeah, it is
exactly.
It was worth half the budget of Asylum just to get them two on board and getting them back in. What do you think of the new sort of announcement that wasn't an announcement about a new game coming out?
I mean, I'm typically one of those people that will reserve judgment on games or movies until I get to experience it myself. I'm excited for any Batman game. It's cool when you get to kind of build on that world and be part of it. But it's definitely until I have something in my hands, I can't say whether or not I think it's going to be great. I think I've been burned too many times.
Yeah, no, that's true, actually. Especially DC. They have a habit of doing that to us. We have to be the most loyal fans in the world to support DC.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rough ride at times.
Yeah, definitely. Especially movie-wise. And would you rather it be sort of set after Origins, or would you rather it go straight back into Modern Day and set after Arkham Knight?
I think just based on how I took that game series, I had more fun when it was kind of set in the modern timeline. It was cool getting Deathstroke and Arkham Origins and stuff like that, and kind of going back. But Batman's good in that way, where you can kind of just let things unfold, and you don't necessarily need to shoehorn it into a timeline. It can be its own standalone thing.
Yeah.
So I'd say probably after Arkham Knight would work just fine for me. Why try and ignore the other great games that came?
Yeah, that's a fair point as well. And I think even though you don't know what's going to happen in the game, it's a fairly predictable outcome there. Everything's going to be all fine and okay because you know what comes after it if you're going to go and do a prequel.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's always it, right? You kind of, unless you're setting things years and years before anything, if it's, set 6 months before an event that you already know about, then you kind of lose some of your stakes.
Yeah, you kind of have a feeling of what's going to happen, and usually 9 times out of 10 it's right of what will happen. I used to hate it when I was a kid when I got going to see a movie or playing a game that was set before the events of a previous one, which was always deeply annoying. I think that's why the Dark Knight trilogy is so good.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, that's why I as much as people don't like reboots of things, I get why it needs to be done, and it kind of
absolutely
contain your own story, and you don't have to work off. I mean, exactly what came before, but you can still have elements of it.
Yeah, I'm really delighted that they're rebooting Batman with Robert Pattinson as well, and not doing like a year one story, which sounded garbage to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked Ben Affleck as Batman. Yeah. I like Ben Affleck. I'm a shameless Ben Affleck supporter. It goes back to like the days of Kevin Smith movies and
Chasing Amy.
Yeah, Chasing Amy is probably my favorite of his. But Ben Affleck, I always have just had an affinity for. But I didn't love his Batman. I assumed he'd do great as Bruce Wayne, and I didn't think that really was the case either. But I think that maybe I just wasn't quite as happy with Zack Snyder's version of him. I know lots of people love it. It just wasn't quite for me. So the fact that Robert Pattinson's gonna come into it, I'm totally fine with. I want to see what happens. Matt Reeves is great in the his Planet of the Apes trilogy was pretty incredible. So I have faith in him, and it's one of those things. Again, I just have to reserve judgment until I actually get to see it myself.
That's well put.
Yeah, well, I'm ready for a new take on it, something different. Every few years, it never hurts.
Now, you mentioned how villains are always more fun, and if you've watched the first season of The Boys, you know that villains are coming in season 2, and I'm sure you're looking forward to being around that and seeing what they have in store. But there's also another movie that's coming out that's just about a villain, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us are looking forward to it. But there's also a lot of early controversy surrounding it, and it's due to the violence surrounding it and people thinking it's going to rile people up. But then you have shows like The Boys that are crazy violent and just showing like what comics can be and what kind of comics there are out there. And no, I haven't even heard of any word about people being outraged about The Boys or anything like that. So, what is your take on that sort of thing?
Well, I mean, I was involved in the first season of The Boys. I read all the scripts and all that stuff, so I knew what was coming in that show. And I wasn't quite sure how people would react to it because it is vastly different as a take on superheroes. Like you're really showing some dark stuff.
Yeah.
And the comics didn't shy away from that either. So you have to do it justice by doing that. But evidently, people were just ready for that sort of thing. I think because of everything Marvel's done, everything DC's done, people are just starting to get a little superhero fatigue. So, anything you can do to kind of shake that up clearly can be a good thing.
Oh, definitely. Because I remember seeing the commercials for it and stuff. And I was like, really? Another like off-brand superhero thing or a spin-off? And then I watched it and I was like, okay, this is brilliant.
Yeah, well, and there's it wouldn't have been as good if you didn't cast the right people in those roles.
Oh,
I think people really, seem to get drawn to the people that were portraying them, so that's always helpful. Like Anthony
Starr,
or who plays Homelander.
Anthony Starr.
Yeah, just that he took that character into the stratosphere with how good he was as that.
Oh yeah, he was like getting to play Superman but Joker style, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like if you don't have someone who can manage that show, any show really wouldn't be as good. If you're going to take risks, you have to have people that can support that risk.
Definitely. Wow. So are you looking forward to the Joker movie?
I am. I've got my tickets.
Yes.
Nice.
I think it'll be interesting. I don't know. The fact that it's Todd Phillips too is intriguing me, and everything they've kind of said as like a Scorsese-esque, 80s mob movie sort of a deal. I like anything in the trailers looks great. So I'm intrigued to see what they do with the characters from there. And anything's better than Jared Leto's Joker. Really.
We're so glad you think so.
Oh, that was a tough movie to get through.
Talk about disappointments. I've never been more hyped before a movie, but never more disappointed afterwards. Other than probably Return of the Jedi.
See, I love Jedi. That it's my favorite of the series. I know it's not the best, but it is by far my favorite.
Hey, it could all be saved by this next one too for me. So it could all be set up. I just don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm intrigued to see what Rise of Skywalker can do to fix my the sore spot The Last Jedi left me. But no, I mean, if going into Suicide Squad was exciting because that was another movie filmed here in Toronto. And the Batmobile is driving up Yonge Street, the main street going through downtown Toronto.
Sick.
So there was lots of cool stuff going into that, and a lot of cool stuff that got done. It was just a shame that it all fell a little flat.
That's a very kind way of putting it.
Well, I don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah,
I like Jared Leto too. I do. enjoyed what he's done. It's just that was,
Oh, Dallas Buyers Club was great.
yeah, it was just an odd misstep that I didn't see coming. Similar to The Last Jedi, I had all the hopes for that and then had them promptly dashed. So we'll see what comes of the next one for that.
Yeah, I still reckon if they actually sort of portrayed the Joker a little better, Jared Leto could have done a great job. I don't think there's any doubt about his credentials. It's just a shame that they went in that direction.
And that's kind of how I feel about Ben Affleck's Batman too. That was there was just something story and character wise that didn't quite groove with it.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck got pretty muscly for that, and he clearly put a lot into the role, but it, as much as it wanted to be, Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, it just wasn't. It tried, but it wasn't that cool.
And Warner Brothers have to share a lot of responsibility for that, especially with Justice League.
Yeah, well, and so that's why the Joker movie intrigues me as much as it does. I was super cynical of it. Warner Brothers doesn't quite seem to know what path they want to take it on. They want to imitate Marvel, in having that joint universe, but most of the attempts at doing that have been pretty poor. So that when they announced that they were going to do a Joker origin story that had nothing to do with anything else, I was definitely a little cynical about it, but it looks pretty cool. So that's why you can't judge it, I suppose, until you see it.
Yeah, I can still remember when that movie was announced, and I was kind of like, well, don't really care for that. Joker should never have an origin. That's the whole reason that he's so cool and mysterious and creepy. But yeah, who knows?
Which is a whole other thing too. I'm intrigued to see what they do with his origin story, if that kind of becomes the mainstream adopted version of his actual backstory. I'm sure regular everyday people won't know any better,
which pains me.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those things where I'm sure Batman nerds everywhere are gonna be constantly telling their friends and coworkers about how, that's not really what he was like in the comics. They never really delved into this stuff. But if it's a good movie and people are excited about it and are happy with it, then I'm up for it. Why not? It's the same with comics, right? People are constantly doing their own take, so.
Well, that's the thing too. We've talked about before. Batman '89. That's not comic accurate. Joker never killed Batman's parents, but back then everyone loved that movie. There weren't people complaining about it.
Oh no, and I still stand by that movie. I'm not the biggest Tim Burton fan, and I know this will be controversial, I know, but I did not care for Batman Returns all that much, which is contrary to pretty much everyone's opinion on the matter. But that first Batman for me is just like cemented in my head as great Batman storytelling. Like
agreed.
The way they portrayed Gotham was incredible.
So true.
And even though I didn't quite feel like Batman Returns lived up to the caliber of the first one, I can see why people love it as much as they did.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm kind of with you on that. I prefer '89 to Returns. I don't think Returns quite captured that same dark, misty, real sort of, I don't know, sort of like an old style city Gotham that they achieved in '89. '89 was a really sort of, it's hard to describe, isn't it? But it didn't quite have that same atmosphere. Even though I enjoyed the film, I still loved it.
Yeah, and I guarantee you part of where that feeling kind of comes from is the fact that the movie's set over Christmas, sort of a thing. Like it's a lot of it's over the holidays, the snow and the Christmas tree lights and all that stuff. It doesn't traditionally feel like Batman.
That's true.
Even though some like in Batman the Animated Series, some of the Christmas stuff is, you know, some of the great moments in that show too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's definitely one of those things that that first movie just got so much right that how do you do that again?
Well, it's probably people freaked out too, but I remember the oozing penguin mouth. That always freaked me out as a kid. I'm sure that turned people off.
Oh yeah, I definitely remember that as a kid, being like, "Oh my God, what is this?"
And the little scene where he gets thrown into the water by the penguins is a little long and dramatic.
Yeah.
Okay,
Although I will say that missile firing penguins have ever since then still been pretty high on my list of cool things I'd love to have in my life.
really? Okay.
Well, it's just, you know, how often do you see something like that?
That's why I say that, because I have a few from like Batman Returns from back in the day. That's interesting.
Oh, that I remember those Kenner figures so well.
Yeah.
The little penguins that you could get. Oh yeah, those were great.
So we don't want to take too much more of your time because we know you are a busy guy, but we want to give you the chance if there's any other projects that you want to shout out or anything else that you want to talk that you can talk about that's upcoming, or anything that you just a personal project you want to share.
I mean, you know, film wise, right now can't really say anything. Boys season 2 we're making right now, and I think it's going to be awesome. Hopefully, everyone else feels the same. I have a long list of custom action figures that I've been trying to get to and struggling to find time. But one of them for my own personal collection will be Billy Butcher.
Oh yes,
from the boys. It was one of those things that they released a new Scourge figure from
the 2-pack
line, yeah, with Hela, and it's got a great Carl likeness. So I'm this one I've been trying my hand at molding and casting. So that's been fun, new experience doing that, because I didn't do that with anything on the first season. And yeah, this is just my personal collection. I think it'd be something cool to have on my wall, but I'm definitely I'm pretty stoked to show it off when it's done.
Oh man, I hope you show that off because that sounds awesome. Especially the casting. That stuff could be tough with the bubbles and all that, but I'm sure you probably kick butt at it.
No, it's been a learning curve, but hopefully I'm starting to get a little bit better. I'm just very grateful for epoxy that I can fill all the bubble holes with and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be but yeah, whole bunch of other stuff coming down. I'm trying to make a biker mice from Mars that a street strip. Just basically get my 90s nostalgia out.
Yeah, I know that I'll be loving all these customs then. Scott, do you have any last words? Any last thing you'd like to say?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed how honestly you spoke about everything, and yeah, fantastic customs. And I love the Shriek figure that you made as well, by the way, as a little side note.
Oh,
But,
that one I was pretty stoked about too. That
yeah,
still somewhere on that list of figures I need to make.
Oh, I'd like to see that. Yeah, that sounds great.
Now, again, we'd like.
Thank you guys for having me here. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Oh, no
Thank you for your
problem.
time.
Hopefully, we get to have you back on again sometime.
Yeah. Well, you know where to find me. So feel free to touch base, and I'd be happy to.
Nice.
Awesome.
Now, again, if you guys are not following James, you guys need to get on it. And you can find him at the Dark _creation. And he also has a link to his personal account where you could follow his own journey on that. And yeah, we look forward to not only the stuff he has in the future, but the new stuff that he's working on for his personal collection, the stuff that is going to be coming up for the boys. And he's already hinted at that it's going to be a lot of fun. The second season, the first one was brilliant. So if you haven't seen that, definitely get on it. It's satire at its finest, and you'll enjoy it. Again, we know he's a busy man, so we're honored that he took the time out of his day to just geek out with us and talk action figures. So again, this is DC Figures and Collectibles, where we do what you do too. and we look at custom action figures on the TV and try to trace their sources till we find the guy. And then we get them on a podcast. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate all the messages, all the comments we get, all the ratings we get, the reviews on the iTunes. Thank you for your feedback. It's nice to hear that people are listening and enjoying the show. And it's also nice to know that people hate certain things and there's things that we could get better at. So thank you for all your feedback. Again, thank you to James for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.